in today's message that I would like to channel from my heart to yours, I'm going to be discussing how empaths, highly empathic people, highly sensitive people, people who have always been sensitive to energy, people who can read a room, people who are hypervigilant, women, all of the characteristics that I've named as a characteristic of the feminine, the receptivity to energy, to experience energy. And the system that was set up by the architects of the 3D social construct known as the 3D matrix, they knew the power of a woman who is in touch with her power. And being in touch with her power means that she's in touch with her sensuality, her sexuality, and she uses it as needed. She uses her sensuality based on what she chooses to be necessary or just simply a desire. And in the patriarchal system, that's not allowed. A woman's femininity, her sensuality, her sexuality must be subjugated and dominated by the male. She is the weaker vessel, so she needs to be owned. She can't think for herself because she's too emotional, so she must be led by another, preferably a man. She is incapable of being a head of the household, so her head don't really count. These subconscious programs and beliefs have cycled through many generations, and this has caused a lot of womb spaces to be filled with holes in them because there is a seeping of life force energy when her sensuality is not hers to use and choose in her sovereignty. Our power has been not only given away, but the system has been set up to keep us disempowered. For a lot of masculines, if a woman isn't being sensual with him, and maybe it's because of things that have occurred between them, that she don't feel drawn, open, soft, feminine, safe to receive. Maybe she doesn't feel the passionate connection, magnetism, the drive because of his irritability, a man's coldness. See, the system that has programmed us all in some shape, form, or fashion is a very narcissistic system that's set up to always seek power outside of you, always seek a source of power outside of you. And so the easiest thing to dominate is a partner, especially one that we have been told worldwide, she's weak. She's a weak vessel. She can't be trusted. Eve went and got fruit from the snake. Jezebel, she's controlling. Sarah, look at Sarah. She had sex, almost had sex with a king. Abraham was afraid to say it was his wife, so he said it was his sister. But that's, we go say that Sarah messed up. Abraham go get mad at Sarah because he don't want to accept the fact that he was afraid. And so in an effort to not feel useless, invaluable, incapable, disempowered, the masculine who is still being controlled by these subconscious programs believes that his woman's sensuality, sexuality, her connection to nature, her connection to Mother Earth, her connection to the cosmos in which souls navigate to come to this planet, he believes that he should have say-so over how she uses her energy. This is creating karma on this planet because women all over the world are experiencing many levels of negligence and abuse simply because of the programs. Whenever you hear me talk about some of these issues, the issue isn't about personal judgments against certain groups of people. This is a spiritual issue of polarization and duality, social engineering to keep the feminine and the masculine either using one another, neglecting one another, abusing one another, and not knowing how to be in union with one another in harmony. The masculine ego that we all have, but it's more concentrated in men. And we can break this down to hormones like testosterone. The higher those levels are, the less likely they are to experience oxytocin from cuddling and sex and hugging and holding. And so because many men have the same gaping hole that we have in our sacral chakra, in our womb space, our root chakra, our solar plexus, for not feeling safe, not being able to be confident, men have this mirrored in their heart space. And if the heart is not connected to the mind and the mind is ruling that person, intimacy is not possible. And whatever intimacy we were experiencing prior to 2019, when we entered into a new galactic year, a new zodiacal age of Aquarius, when we left the age of Pisces, now the age of Pisces and those qualities are having to leave us. We've been indoctrinated. We've been brainwashed from very early ages and programmed. And it's not just what I'm talking about. Disney movies. The feminine is always to blame. The mama is always the evil stepmother, the wicked mother, the abusive, negligent mother figure. This has been driven into our psyches. And so now the chicken is coming home to roost. And I'm going to say this, because going against the grain is not going to get us anywhere if we intend to evolve. For a lot of women, our core life force energy, we didn't know how to use it. We didn't have an instruction manual. So not knowing how to use something or something's true purpose, you're more likely to abuse and misuse it and allow this part of you to be abused and misused. So many of us have been slaying dragons and casting out these deep, dark, dense energies attached to the masculine with our womb space as a sponge, absorbing all of that unprocessed pain and trauma into us. The sadness and the grief that many of them are not equipped with navigating in a healthy way. And we absorb it into us. We absorb the rage. We have absorbed the feeling of inadequacy. We have absorbed the trauma of growing up as an indigenous man in the Americas and beyond. There is a pain that they have disassociated from, but that doesn't mean that that pain cannot be sexually transmitted in something called sexual transmutation. And when we would open up our bodies to them, if they were in these states of mind and in these places of fight or flight, then the chemicals that their skin and their body was releasing was that of something that raised cortisol, the stress hormone within us. We were literally taking on dis-ease and taking on mental instabilities and emotional dysregulation from them. And they would feel better for a little while. But soon enough, if they didn't know how to sustain it, if they didn't know how to create positive energy from their own heart space based in love, then they're going to seek to fill that void space, because after all, nature abhors a void. Nature abhors vacuum, emptiness. And in that sensation of emptiness, without the capacity to read those codes, because the heart is what reads the codes that are being emitted from our emotions. And if they can't translate the program, because they're in need of a hardware upgrade and a software upgrade and a reboot to clear out the viruses and take down the walls that have been placed around their hearts in fear of intimacy and vulnerability and honesty, for fear of being seen as weak, inadequate, useless, and not needed. In all of that energy, we are walking around with holes in spaces. And these empty spaces become breeding grounds for many different forms of gaslighting and maladaptive strategies to cope with this feeling of emptiness and loneliness and inadequacy. And now women are having to tend to their pain, to their wounds, their scars, their trauma that's so deep most men can't see. And if they see it, they don't know how to approach it. Because the same system detach them from their emotions, so they don't have a translator to understand us. So it's so much easier to say, women just emotional. You can't listen to them. You can't trust them. You can't pay attention to what they're saying. They're just emotional. And in this, there is something called narcissistic supply. Now, if we have been socially engineered to be more connected with the emptiness within us versus the wholeness, we're going to seek supply outside of us. And this constant draining and sucking and inability to give compassion to the self, and it created these many different false self masks that we use, all of us, to try to get needs met. As I'm speaking about these things, again, I'm talking about subconscious programs, and each human on this planet has both masculine and feminine energies within their body, mind, and spirit. So in these conflicts that are experienced within, a lot of women learn to rationalize, especially because if emotions can't be trusted or appreciated, and let me pull away from that, because ultimately religion told a lot of us that the heart is deceitfully wicked, and no man can trust their heart because they don't know their heart. Only God knows the heart. Now, there are many levels to translate what that really means, but that was taken surface level, and many of us were taught this from that space. So we disconnected from the heart. The heart became something that you must not trust. And so now when women are offering their hearts to men, they don't identify that as an offering of love. And because they may not know how to be a safe space creator and sustainer for her, the heart is misused, abused, neglected, underappreciated, and the communications, the language of the heart is miscommunicated. We must understand that Babylon wasn't just a city from ancient times, and it wasn't just a place where the languages were confused and these two towers were split. Those represent what's within us, the masculine and the feminine, the right hemisphere in the brain and the left hemisphere of the brain. And now there is this miscommunication because we're speaking two different energetic languages. The language of the head and the ego says, I need. And if you are my woman, you are supposed to satisfy this need for me. The language of the heart says, I'll give. I will wear my heart on my sleeve. Even though I have been hurt, I will try again. I will forgive again. I will give another chance. And at some point, a lot of women lose themselves in their relationships because they don't know that the heart is so precious. It must have boundaries and force, even at the expense of upsetting others, because of you not allowing them to come and go as they please. So the heart isn't deceitfully wicked. The heart is very clear on its communication on what is love and what is safe to receive and what is not. And when we ignore that, we invite reproductive issues. We invite cancers into our temples. And this is what we have been doing for generations. So the meanness, the irritability within the masculine sometimes leads to lack of connection, vulnerability. It can lead to insults. It can lead to not being able to be accountable because maybe you're disconnected from your ability to see yourself. You only see the parts of you that are loving light, that are righteous, that are praised, glorified, worthy to be seen. The parts of you that cause people to celebrate you and compliment you. It feels really good to be praised by others. And so we hid the parts of us that we were programmed to believe aren't worthy to be acknowledged. And in that compartmentalization, we have become battlefields. A man who is unaware of the way he affects others. A man who is unaware of his emotional grid system, his emotional ley lines. Who is also being DNA activated, receiving light code activations, becoming more of a powerful electrical circuit without connection to the heart. This man is kind of like Black Lightning. If you ever watch that show, when they lose control, when they get into a dark night of the soul, when they become depressed, when they're experiencing soul loss, which is a shamanic term for these parts of you that you're disconnected from and not even aware that you have lost parts of you throughout life and you're not operating as a whole person. You're not even aware of the emotions within you that are crying out for your attention. So your partner has become the remedy and the source of water for you. But her well is empty and dry because she has given more of her than she actually had to give until she's sick, fatigued, autoimmune disease, can't really function, overwhelmed by work, just not even wanting to start the day because it seems like our system is experiencing this space between what can be and what was. And many feminines are sitting in this space and they're loving their masculines that are in their lives, but they don't know what to do. And I am here to tell you, do nothing. Take your hands off of it. If it's too heavy for you, that's your heart letting you know that this is not a burden you're meant to carry anymore. Leave it here. You choose to be a generational curse breaker, not a generational curse sustainer. And this is exercising free will. And you can tell when you've been in one of these kind of dynamics because there's a fear that comes up when you think about allowing your partner to go through their own awakenings, maybe even their own periods of darkness and ignorance and denying the pain that they have created in their inability to be aware. A lot of men don't get in their body because it's so uncomfortable. And once you go into fight or flight over and over again, and you have not done the work to heal that or reached out to get support, and you're trying to do it all by yourself, you disassociate from the body. You disassociate from your feelings because they seem to be too much to handle. And the 3D matrix makes sure that there is always some form of fear programming, of pressure, fear porn, just constantly, every day, all day. And it keeps us disconnected from the source of connection to the spiritual dimensions, which can only be accomplished through the heart. And so I've been talking to y'all about this since I was having these dreams as a Christian over 10 years ago, that the viruses we're really fighting, the invaders, are invaders of the heart. And many of us shifted into our masculine energy to survive, and we've been living inside of our head. And when you live in your head, there's a certain amount of injury that occurs within your body. So many of us can't give the energy that we used to our partners in relationship because we've been given from an empty cup. We've been living inside of our head, and so our bodies have been neglected. Many of us don't know what our body is trying to tell us. We just know we feel the discomfort, the pain, the cycles that are just irregular, the perimenopause symptoms, the menopause symptoms. We're feeling, but we're figuring out, well, what is it that my body is calling for me to give, right? And so in this space, it can be very uncomfortable. This is the void space of, I feel the effects of what was. I see what I desire to be, and I'm not there yet. And the only thing that helps us when we're going through our spiritual ascension in this space is compassion, patience, and surrender. The woman has tried to do it all and be it all, and it was never meant to be that way. And unfortunately, a lot of masculines may come across this video and resist what I'm saying because the firewall of the program, the virus within the heart, doesn't trust the feminine. Even if the wisdom that is flowing is effective and helpful, transformative, something that will actually lead to cultivation of the things that we desire that are in alignment with our divinity, our worthiness of love. And they will push it away. And I get it. And so I was watching this show called The Untamed. And in this show, on the 35th or 36th episode, you can see where one person who's highly empathic gave their core life force energy to someone they love dearly. But that person that they love dearly has been hurt, perceives this person to be the enemy and the problem, and they can't feel past it. They can't see past it. The emotions of resentment and bitterness and unforgiveness and hurt, sadness and unprocessed grief has turned into rage. And so they treat this person through that filter, even if they're trying to be kind or cordial. It's going through the filter of, you're part of my problem, you hurt me. And this is what I've been hearing the masculine say. You're taking things away from me. You're not behaving the same as how you behaved when we first got together. You're changing. You act like you don't need me anymore. You're detached. You're more quiet than usual. You're wanting to spend more time alone and not with me. And I feel abandoned. And there's this massive wave of loneliness and disconnection a lot of masculines are having to face. The key to shifting from this space is acknowledging your place, the role that you have played in sustaining this toxic, patriarchal culture that has not just hurt women, it has affected every human being on this planet. One thing that has been made clear to me is that sensuality, our sacral chakra, creativity, imagination, visualization, all these things are a necessity when you're rebirthing something, when you're building something, when you're growing something, when you're going through birth pains because you're creating something that doesn't exist yet. And if men do not have the ability to intuit, to connect with empathy, to have premonitions and foresight, to feel into the intuitive energy of what's happening. See, none of those things can happen without the feminine being nurtured and cultivated within oneself. So it may seem as if they're being punished for something they did not do and do not deserve. So if you are listening to me, and any of the things that I've brought up you're experiencing, know that you are not alone. After thousands of readings, consults, and coaching calls, I would say 90% of those of us who are going through this ascension process are feeling some of the weight of these karmic energies so that they may catalyze us into creating a dharmic timeline, a more harmonious frequency on the planet. But there is a group who saw this coming and sowed seeds of discord and strife, labeled it as the feminine, as if the feminine can do nothing but cause problems and strife, because they knew what was coming. If men could trust their women when they're speaking from the heart, miracles can happen just from learning to trust. But because men have been told to distrust women since they were boys, to distrust their own feminine energy, to distrust emotions, we don't have common ground. We have two options. Do what the women in previous generations before us did and potentially die early, uncomfortable death of dis-ease, fatigue and pain, emotional wounding that happens over and over and over again. Or we say, I'm not going to do that to myself. We cannot force understanding into anyone who has this program running in their subconscious mind. It is their sovereign journey to discover their own inner workings and the resources, the tools to change that. Energy has been flowing backwards. The worlds that focus on your physical, your material, logical, what makes sense. That's how we were brainwashed, to disconnect from spirit. So if we are truly awakening and we are ascending above our traumas to access our triumph, if indeed you have chosen that path, there isn't a playbook that generations before you can give you to tell you what to do, because it's different for each and every one of us. And I'm not going to even try to give a blanket statement and a cookie cutter way to solve this. This is going to be a process. When I died and went to hell, and you can watch the video here on YouTube, let me tell you what hell really is. Hell isn't a place that we're trying to avoid going to, as we were told. Hell is already here. Hell is a potential. Hell is a stream of consciousness. Hell is a dimension. It is a reality that's created by these unprocessed traumas, the refusal to go within and heal thyself. In the experience where I went on an astral tour through hell, each person had a hologram inside of their crown chakra, right over top of their head, like a screen, a holographic screen in the air, and constantly they re-experience their traumas. So if you had an abandonment trauma, almost most of your interactions day to day led back to that, and you thought about it, tried to let it go, and then you got feelings and emotions that have been created because of the thought that you marinated in. And that's torment, because nobody else could see what they were being tormented by. And this is what we've been doing. Hiding our pain, hiding our grief, hiding our anger, not really knowing safe ways, healthy ways to be with it and process it and to let it go. And so we're in these personal cells, prison cells, where we're having negative, critical thoughts, thoughts that create sabotage, catastrophic thoughts. We have this cognitive bias. So before we experience any information, we're filtering it through what we think is safe or what we think is trustworthy. Through this filter of all of this pain now, there's going to be some miscommunications. And so we smile and say, I'm fine. I'm doing good. How are you? But 12 hours out of the day, we're being tormented by these thoughts, these emotions, these feelings, the inability to regulate the nervous system. That's hell. To experience torment, torture, suffering, pain, to not feel like you can express it, share it, trust anybody to come into your life to assist you with it, because this keeps you in a victim mentality, right? Because I'm re-experiencing my traumas over and over again, which means I'm a victim to life. And so whatever is happening outside of me in the holographic simulated reality is going to reflect that, because attention controls where energy goes. That's a prison cell. The body is meant to be a sacred temple. The third temples are us being rebuilt, as within, so without. The wars we see happening in holy lands in the world is happening within the parts of us. It's happening in the wholes of us. The war is happening within us. And tomorrow, I will go into how we can begin shifting from this war within the feminine and masculine within us, our hearts and our egos, and shifting into being whole. Man, your third eye's just been kissed. Namaste, Numi, stay.